A transgender influencer has a meltdown on TikTok. Stephen A. Smith may vote for a Republican, just not Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis. And a female pilot goes on an absolute meltdown and people got off the plane before it was even taking off. This is Can't Cancel Rob Smith. All right, so Stephen A. Smith could possibly vote for a Republican someday, just not that mean old Donald Trump or that mean old Ron DeSantis. This is him on PBD podcast, basically talking about how he feels about whether or not he could vote Republican and pretty much the state of the Republican Party in general.
As I've said repeatedly, Biden. But I have to tell you, when I see some of the things that are transpiring, I'm not happy about it. And if it were anyone, and I've said this publicly, listen, one day I'll see Trump, because Trump and I knew each other a little bit before he ran for the presidency. Yeah. And I never, the things that I've seen from him, the things that have been said about him, I never heard nor saw it before. So a lot of what he does sometimes, I think he's just catering to his constituency as opposed to him being that way. But having said that, I would tell him to his face, I would vote in a heartbeat any Republican candidate that was up there. Maybe not DeSantis. I don't like some of the things happening in Florida for obvious reasons. But outside of him, I would have voted for Christie. I would have voted for Haley. Hell, I might have thought about Ramaswamy. I think he's crazy. I think he's crazy in his own way, but smart.
You would have
smart.
All right, look, and by the way, there's so much going on here. So first of all, let's talk about Stephen A. Smith. I talk about Stephen A. Smith a lot because to me, Stephen A. Smith is, okay, so this is what's going on here, right? When it comes to Republicans in this election, when it comes to the Republican Party in 2024, their way to the black community is through black men, okay? Everybody knows that black men are pretty much done with the Democrat Party. They're done with the Democrat Party. Any black votes that Republicans are going to get are going to come from black men. And now you've seen this stuff and you know how critical I am of this black vote turning into like this 30 to 40% thing for Republicans. I don't see that happening, but you do see the shift in black men going more and more and more for Republicans. So what's going on with the Stephen A. Smiths of the world? And this is why I think that Stephen A. Smith is, I can't even call him controlled opposition. He's just basically a black lib commentator that maybe is a little bit more centrist than the average black lib male commentator. And so he is there to basically be like, okay, like black men, we're going to give you somebody that's sort of talking about the reasons that, you feel uncomfortable with Democrats and you feel uncomfortable with the left right now. But, we're still going to underline this by saying that, oh, don't forget, that these Republicans are racist weirdos and all that other stuff. So that's what's going on with Stephen A. Smith right here. And as I've said in previous episodes, and you know what? I'll probably have a lot to say about Stephen A. Smith this year because he is the main one that I'm starting to see right now that is being used by mainstream Democrats and that is being used by the left to sort of target those black men that they think that they are missing, that they think that they're losing, right? So these mainstream black Democrats, like they're not going to use Andrew Gillum, who's bisexual and, got caught, doing meth with some hooker while his wife and kids were at home. He can't be used to appeal to disaffected black male Democrats. Who the Bakari Sellers, like, on CNN, he can't really be used. Like Van Jones is very much so, like, he's just so in the CNN world. I don't know what black male appeal Van Jones really has, and that's being completely honest. But Stephen A. Smith is somebody that I've been seeing so much more of lately, and he's been giving this very sort of centrist vibe as a black man. So I think that he is being used to promote sort of that agenda. I think eventually he'll have people vote for Biden or Newsom or whoever it is at the top of the Democrat ticket. I just think that he's being used in this way. And so I think it's very interesting that he says, oh, I could possibly vote for a Republican someday, just not that mean old Trump. And just not that mean old Ron DeSantis, because Ron DeSantis has done some things in Florida that I don't like. Like what? he's as like Stephen A. Smith is as propagandized as anybody else if he thinks that Ron DeSantis has done anything untoward in regards to Black Americans in Florida. And, you know, that propaganda, they really started pushing out last year when DeSantis dropped out. They kind of held back on that propaganda. I think that DeSantis will run again in 2028. So we'll see this stuff come around over and over and over again. But first of all, let's get back to Stephen A. Smith. He is fascinating. Let me tell you a story about Stephen A. Smith. I saw him come speak when I was an undergrad at Syracuse University some time ago. Not that long ago, but some time ago. And Stephen A. Smith came, and this is what I respect about Stephen A. Smith, is because Stephen A. Smith was giving a message to the crowd at Syracuse University. I believe that a Black student union had invited him to speak, and he was giving a message that I was not prepared to receive at that moment in my life. I was your typical Black gay lib on a college campus. And what he did was he preached a message of capitalism and entrepreneurship. All right? And he didn't bring politics into it. He just said, if you want this, if you want to live a certain life, if you want to live a certain lifestyle, if you want certain things, this is what you're going to have to do to get there. And I remember thinking that, oh my God, this is so capitalistic and this guy's a monster and I'm just going to go for my dreams. And I'm, you know, just like the typical sort of like college kid, sort of like Black lib stuff. And so Stephen A. Smith, I believe, has always had this in him. I'm not a big sports guy, so I don't know of his sports commentary. What I do know is that he is extremely successful and he is now sort of dipping his toe into the political realm, which is, like I've said before, no mistake. But he makes a good point here. Well, he makes a point here. It's not a good point. I'm going to demolish this point a little bit because he's basically telling you, and we're going to bring it back to Trump here. And like it or not, this is an election year. I try not to make everything about Trump, but some things are going to be about Trump this year because he is the Republican nominee for president. So let's talk about it. He's basically saying that I knew Trump before he decided to run for president. And all of these things that I'm hearing right now about Donald Trump, you know, being a racist and all that other stuff, he is saying that I personally did not see these things. And so let me give you some example, like an example from somebody who's met Trump multiple times, who's spent time with multiple members of that family. These people are not racists. When you are a Black person, and I've said this before, when you're a Black person in this country, when you're a Black person in America, like, you know when white people are racist. And this has nothing to do with Democrat or Republican. Like, you know when you're around white people who are uncomfortable in the presence of a Black person. You know it instinctually. You'll get body language, you get no eye contact. These people will be looking everywhere else. They'll be like literally going out of their way to avoid interacting with you at all. That is the sign of a racist white person. The Trumps are just not like that. They have never been like that. They've never been like that towards me. I've never heard of them being like that towards anybody. And this is what I think. I think that these people have done business for many years. And one of the appeal of Trump to a lot of people, wealthy and successful, but he's got the everyman appeal. And he's got the everyman appeal to where he's been dealing with Black people and different types of people and gay people and all this stuff like his entire life. You feel me? So the idea that he's some sort of mouth-breathing racist, like, this was a concoction of the left. And they sort of pushed this down people's throats. Like, they pushed that agenda down people's throats so much that people started to believe it. And I think that that's what Stephen A. Smith is saying here. What he's basically saying is that I've had personal interactions with this person and I was not getting racist vibes. Stephen A. Smith saying that, well, you know what, I'm never going to vote for Trump or I'm never going to vote for DeSantis or whatever. That's him trying to play both sides. And like I said, he is being used by the powers that be. Mind you, this is somebody that is getting, I believe, something to the tune of 8 figures a year from ESPN. All right. So he is going to say what his corporate masters want him to say, what is safe for his corporate masters to allow him to say. And so the role that Stephen A. Smith is playing in the mainstream media in 2024 as a Black male that is capitalist entrepreneurship and probably more centrist than the average Biden voter is the role that he's playing is for the Democrat Party, for the left. We see you, Black men. We understand you, Black men. We understand that you don't feel represented by us. We understand that you don't feel all this, but you still have to be over here anyway because he's racist and those people don't like you and all this other stuff. So it's very interesting to me that he's saying that he would vote for Republican, just not the two, not the two most popular ones that have been smeared relentlessly via the mainstream media, which goes to tell me that he's never going to vote for a Republican. All right. He is not going to risk all that he has built and all the connections that he has and his contracts and all that other stuff to come out in support of a Republican. It's just not going to happen, folks. But good for him for playing a different role for the 2024 election. All right, we have yet another trans influencer on TikTok that is lacking joy. And this trans influencer wants to go on social media just to tell you how much joy they lack.
Happy Trans Day of Visibility. If I'm being honest, it's been really hard to experience trans joy and pride for me lately. I've been kind of scared recently. I've gotten misgendered more in the last 3 weeks than I have in the last 6 months combined. And I've been out for 10 years. I worked in the same place for 3 years. For God's sakes, I live in Portland, Oregon. And it's easy for people to say that's their problem. That's their issue. That's their way that they see you. It shouldn't figure in how you see yourself. But it hurts. It does. And I can't lie and say that when I dress more of a certain way or act more of a certain way or honestly just don't speak up as much, I get treated better and I feel safer. But that is no way to live a life, and no way to live a trans life especially. I don't have an answer for this. Things seem to be pretty scary for trans people right now. I can say that seeing new people come out fills me with so much joy, seeing them explore their gender and how...
I had to tell you this. I'm a gay man. I have a lot of empathy for trans people. It may not seem like it sometimes because I don't bite my tongue when it comes to these issues, although there are certain places that you can be open about your opinions on these issues and certain places where you cannot be open about your opinions on these issues because we do not, we have very few free speech platforms in this country. And this is what I'm going to say about the trans issue. I have a lot of empathy for trans people. Because before all these conservatives and all the right wingers and all the stuff, like they discovered trans people and they have gotten complete, like the entire movement, the TQ and all that stuff. And I've said this a million times, has gone completely insane over the past 10 to 12 years. We've all seen this. Like I was, in the gay community for years, and you are, tangentially around some trans people before it became cool, before it became what it is now. And so the trans explosion, I've always believed this, that the trans explosion over the past decade is not about people who are genuinely trans. It is not about people who genuinely feel like they were born in the wrong body, because I believe, and I've always believed, that that genuinely exists, that there are people that genuinely have gender dysphoria. And gender dysphoria was until recently classified as a mental illness. I think that the Rainbow TQ Mafia got them to eliminate its classification as a mental illness. So I believe that there were people that genuinely believe that they were born in the wrong body. But this thing that it has become, very much so, specifically in the past decade, to me, is a social media contagion. To me, this has nothing to do with people that are genuinely born in the wrong body. And it has become more about people who want attention via social media. It has become about people like, look at Dylan Mulvaney. Like, it's ridiculous. All right. It's become about people making a mockery of womanhood. It's become about people wanting access to the spaces of biological women. It has become this thing that it never was before. And that's because of social media. And so now to this person right here who is existing in a great deal of pain and will always exist in a great deal of pain because this is the life that this person has chosen for herself. And by the way, in terms of the pronouns and all that stuff, my rule has always been, you can call me a leftist, you can call me a lib, you can call me whatever. I think what I want to think, I believe what I want to believe, and I speak how I want to speak. And my rule has always been, if I'm encountered with a transgender person in real life, very rare, social media will have you think that there's a million trans people walking around. It's just not true until you go to New York City, which has the highest propensity of trans people that I've ever seen. Like, it is just wild that this is like 0.01% of the population, and yet they're everywhere in New York City. That's wild. But like I said, when I am encountering a real life transgender person and they decide they're like, I identify as a man, great. That's fine. I identify as a woman, great, that's fine. I'll do that. And that's just me. That is just what I fundamentally believe. And just like the TQ Mafia is not going to bully me into saying, you know, into telling me what I can and cannot say and what I can and cannot believe about that, the right-wing mafia or conservative media or whatever is not going to bully me into saying, well, you know, you need to call them a man all the time, blah, blah, blah. No, because that's just not who I am. And you're not going to make me say or think or do things that I do not believe in. But this person's entire life is going to be hard, and I will tell you why. Because for a lot of these trans people, particularly the ones that go on TikTok to lament and whine about, oh, I'm misgendered, my life is so hard, I'm finding it hard, but like their entire existence is built around this identity that is so synthetic. And it's also this identity that is so built around everybody else's reaction to it. You cannot build your entire identity and your entire existence as a human being on this earth dependent on what everybody else is thinking about you at any given moment. You can't do it because you will live your entire life upset. You will live your entire life in just depressed. You will live your entire life in not in a bad place. I cannot live my life as a black man thinking in my head constantly all the time about how somebody is going to interact or see me or treat me because I'm black. Same thing about being gay. Like I just can't do it. It would drive me crazy. I would not get any work done, which seems to be why a lot of these trans influencers don't seem to have jobs. Because all they do is whine about their identities on social media and hope to make money off of TikTok views, first of all. And like I said, a lot of the trans stuff went so far, so quick, and it is inciting this huge backlash because this is the thing. And I will tell you, this is the difference between the gay and lesbian rights movement and the transgender movement. The gay and lesbian rights movement was fought long and hard over decades of gays and lesbians integrating themselves into regular mainstream society, blending in, showing everybody that, you know, we're normal, we're same-sex attracted, we're normal, we're, you know, doctors and teachers and lawyers and all this other stuff. Like, we just want to live a good life and sort of live the American dream too, right? And that's work that took decades and decades and decades to build. And then finally, I think that the gay and lesbian rights movement was won when you got the 1-2 punch of Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal, which was the law that made it illegal to be gay and lesbian in the military, and marriage equality, right? So you got those two things. I think that was the end of the movement for gay and lesbian rights, right? Anything since then is just extra. It's extra stuff. And by the way, nobody's really arguing for anything for gays and lesbians anymore. It's all about trans. And so the backlash to all the trans stuff is coming because instead of trans people saying that, okay, we're going to take a cue from gays and lesbians, we're just going to integrate ourselves into life. You know, you identify as a woman, like it's all that, it's fine, blah, blah, blah. No. What they wanted to do in the social media era is they wanted to use social media to bludgeon the average America with trans. And not only trans, you are to call me a woman. I'm just the same as a biological woman. I want to play biological women's sports. I need to be in jail with biological women. I need to be in homeless shelters with biological women. You're not allowed to ask me about this. You're not allowed to ask me about that. Let's change the language in which we speak about these issues. Let's get AP to tell journalists that you're not supposed to say this, or you're supposed to say gender affirming care instead of gender reassignment surgery. And they wanted to just bludgeon people with all of this other stuff. Because I think that they knew fundamentally the weaknesses of the movement and the weaknesses of all the theories and all of the stuff would eventually reveal themselves, and they wanted to get ahead of it. Well, they've inspired this huge backlash. They have not gotten ahead of the weaknesses of the theories because everybody's starting to figure out that you don't transition children. Everybody is starting to figure out that biological men who identify as women are different from biological women in sports and in pretty much every other way. Americans are starting to figure this out. And so what I believe that's going on here is that this is coming to bite the community back in the butt, first of all. And second of all, and this is what I believe, and we're already starting to see it because we're already starting to see the detransitioners, is that there are a lot of people that have broken bodies and broken minds because of the social media fueled contagion that is the TQ movement. And they are going to be the collateral, because let me tell you something. Political roadkill, when you're political roadkill, people move on. Trust me, it's happened to me. I have been political roadkill before. And when you're used and you're no longer useful, people move on. And that movement has moved on from all of these transgender people, or these people that think that they were transgender, that were sort of brainwashed into living this lifestyle. Again, I actually feel a lot of empathy for this person. That person is going through unimaginable pain. And by the way, that pain that this person is going through will continue for the rest of their life, because it's not going to change. With that voice, people are going to keep on calling that person by the gender that they don't prefer. With that person is going to keep on dealing with all of these things. And, you know, some people make a joke out of it. Some people laugh about it. I think it's really sad. I honestly really do. I think that what has been done to these people is deeply sad. And we're going to start seeing a lot of the results and a lot of the effects of this in the coming years. All right, a Nigerian woman has some interesting thoughts about why she never sees Nigerian women with Black American men, and it is starting a little bit of an uproar in the Black community.
Nigerians just be marrying anybody, right? But like, I've never seen a Nigerian woman married to a Black American man. I've seen Nigerian men married to Black American women. Nigerian men marry anything, not even anybody. Nigerian men marry anything. I'm sure there's a Nigerian married to a UFO. Like, Nigerian men marry like North Korea, like for many parts of the world. Like, there's a Nigerian man married to that woman. But Nigerian women also marry anybody, right? I've seen Nigerian women married to Greek men, married to French men, married to Caucasian American men, married to Eritrean men, married to... But I've never seen a Nigerian woman married to a Black American. I've seen Nigerian women married to Chinese men and even North Korean men as well. I've never seen married to a Black American or African American man. Somebody should tell me, is there any Nigerian woman married to a Black American man? Like, I honestly need to know. I'm genuinely curious. I've never seen it, ever.
All right, so look, let me bring you into this conversation, because this is very interesting, because there's a whole lot of stuff. First of all, this Nigerian woman is throwing some very deep shade at Black American men. And I gotta tell you, this is a conversation that has been bubbling up in the Black community for quite some time, between what is termed as foundational Black Americans. That means Black Americans that were born and raised in this country, that are direct descendants of slavery. They call themselves foundational Black Americans. They call themselves ADOS, which is American descendants of slavery. And they're starting to get the memo that a lot of the Black immigrants that come to this country are not here for them. A lot of the Black immigrants that come to this country are disrespectful towards Black Americans. They look down on Black Americans. They criticize Black Americans. They do videos like this that are low-key very shady towards Black American men, right? And that's the tension that there is between these Black immigrants and, like I said, the foundational Black Americans. So let's break it down. Let's break down the average Black immigrant that comes to this country, particularly from Nigeria, which is, you know, the top of the food chain in Nigeria is very wealthy. So let's keep clear on that a lot of these Nigerians that come to this country are very wealthy. And they come to this country with, number one, more money, number two, more access to resources, more access to capital, and more access to a higher end lifestyle than a lot of the Black Americans in this country. And another level to this, and you want to talk about, you know, a lot of the DEI stuff and all that other stuff, a lot of these non-Black Americans come into this country and they're the ones that are benefiting from all of the things that we're supposed to help Black Americans sort of get on an equal playing field in this country. And that happens over and over again. I've seen this myself. I used to do a program called the minority advertising internship program, which is years ago when I was an undergrad. I used to work on Madison Avenue. I was in advertising for probably the first 8 to 10 years of my career. I was on Madison Avenue doing advertising industry. And that was a super white industry. It was such a white industry that one of my first interviews that I got in the field, the people didn't know that I was black. The only thing that they saw was my resume, which had Syracuse and all this work experience on there. And I will never forget, those people had no idea that a black person was about to come in and interview for this position. And they were shooketh. They were shook. All right. So there's no black people in that industry. And so what was the minority advertising internship program that was basically supposed to be to get black people into the advertising industry morphed into the multicultural advertising internship program. And so what happened with that over the decade plus is that it became less black and more other. Less black, more Latino, less black, more Asian, less black American, more Caribbean, Nigerian, et cetera, et cetera. And let me tell you something. Americans see that stuff. And that is a conversation that they're having. And I'm not even entirely sure if that's a left or right situation, but I know that a lot of the black libs that are sort of bubbling under that, don't have to tap dance for mainstream media contracts and whatever, they're having that conversation. And you'll even see some black conservatives talking about this. And the question is, in the DEI question notwithstanding, the question is, why do you want to have these people coming in and having access to all of these things that black Americans have built and that are trying to do stuff for themselves? Because, black Americans are dead last in virtually every conceivable metric in this country. Education, median income, net worth, property ownership, stock ownership, all of that stuff. Black Americans are last, always. And there's cultural issues and there's structural issues and there's a lot of other stuff that goes into that. But a lot of these black Americans are starting to ask that question. And so this Nigerian woman basically throwing some deep, low-key shade at black American men, that's what that's all about. All right, coming up, a female pilot has this weird meltdown, and honestly, the meltdown results in a lot of passengers deciding not to fly on the plane. And this is coming from Inside Edition. I want to play you this. This is completely insane.
Okay, if you don't feel safe, get off the airplane.
This is your captain speaking, but never like this.
I'll stop, and we'll fly the airplane. Don't worry, I'm going to let my co-pilot fly it. He's a man. Okay?
It's a total meltdown. The pilot boarded in her street clothes and addressed the passengers over the intercom. Passenger Pam O'Neill couldn't believe what was happening.
She said, let's take a vote. How many of you would like to take off now with me dressed as I am, or would you prefer that I take 10 minutes to get changed into my cute little uniform? Then she started talking about her divorce and political candidates. And the minute she mentioned that, a gentleman stood up and just yelled, whoa, enough, you're scaring me.
Another passenger, Randy Reese, got up to leave and gave a running commentary on social media. Pilot also insulted a couple on board.
Did I offend you? Okay, so did I purposely offend you? I did. The answer is yes. Flight attendants, please disarm doors.
After 20 passengers insisted on getting off the United Airlines flight, the pilot quietly left the aircraft.
Okay, if you don't feel safe, get off the airplane.
If that woman had gotten up and done this when I was on the plane, I would feel like I was dealing with somebody that is very deeply unstable, that is deeply emotional, and that's somebody that I absolutely would not feel comfortable flying the plane. Has nothing to do with the fact that she's a woman. It has something to do with the fact that she is obviously going through something. This is somebody that's obviously been reading too much Twitter, reading the DEI conversation, all of that other stuff, and decides that she's going to make a political stand and she's going to make a political statement. And I'm sorry, what I need you to do, male, female, black, white, orange, chimpanzee, zebra, whatever, I need you to fly the plane. I don't need politics. I don't need political statements. I don't need grandstanding. I need you to fly the plane. And if I'm on that plane, it is very obvious to me that this woman is not capable of doing that stuff. She's obviously going through something. She's talking about political candidates. She's talking about a divorce. She's talking about all of these things that I do not want to hear my potential pilot ranting about. So this is somebody that obviously feels some kind of way about how she's perceived as being a female pilot. Now to the DEI conversation, which a lot of people on the right seem to be really engaging in with glee nowadays. And I have a little bit more to say about that, but what I will say is this. When you lower standards in order to get more of a specific type of person to do a job that requires a very high level of technical skills, like say, oh, I don't know, flying a plane, you're in deep trouble. I don't want standards being lessened for a very high skilled job like flying an airplane. And look at all the things that we have seen in the transportation arena over the past couple of years since the Biden administration took office. Look at what we have seen with the train derailment in East Palestine. Look at what we have seen with the bridge that just got knocked down in Baltimore. Like, look at what we've seen with all of the record number of near misses that are happening in the airports nowadays with the air traffic controllers not knowing how to do their job. Look at what we've just seen with the Southwest flight that had one of the something like the engine or something like that, like flew off and they had to make an emergency landing. I don't remember having ever seen so many of these things in our transportation industry in the Trump era. So what I do believe is this. I do believe that there's a lot of incompetency going on with the people that are in charge right now. I do believe that a lot of the negative impacts of them forcing the DEI stuff is really leading to less qualified people and obviously people that have less emotional control and less emotional regulation sort of being put in positions that I don't think that they should be in. And these are the things that, by the way, make travel and make day-to-day life for the rest of us more dangerous than they should be. So those are the things that we should be thinking about. But yeah, if I'm on that plane and I see a woman that's trying to make some sort of political statement about being a woman and who she's going to vote for, and I want to fly my plain clothes, and if you don't want to, like, if you're not comfortable with me flying the plane in these clothes, then you're some kind of sexist. This woman is obviously has lost the plot. And no, I don't want to fly on that plane. All right, Problematics, thank you so much for joining. As always, you can find Can't Cancel Rob Smith on Apple Podcasts, at iHeart Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also find me on youtube.com/@Can'tCancelRobSmith. I'll see you next time.